Hola a todos, buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a un espacio más de Talentland Latinoamérica. Estamos muy contentos de tenerlos aquí en este canal Tech Channel. Y pues quiero presentarles a una persona increíble, muy divertida, que seguro muchos de ustedes conocen, pero no sin antes mencionarles que durante los próximos 25 minutos vamos a cambiar a inglés, porque vamos a platicar con esta persona que, como les dije, seguro les va a encantar quién es y ya lo conocen perfectamente, pero bueno, voy a cambiar entonces a inglés, ¿sale? Well, I'm very honored to be here today with someone that I know you guys love and you already know, and every one of us find really, really funny and very interesting. So here is Paul Zaloom. He's from New York. He's an actor and a writer, known better for Beekman's World, and with more than 10 years of experience sharing science for children. We have the beautiful opportunity to talk to him for the next 25 minutes. Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
We're glad
How
to
you
have
doing?
you. I'm good. Thank you very much. So, I would like to start with a few questions that both the audience and the team have prepared for you. So, if you like, we'll just jump right to it.
Sounds good.
Perfect. So, we would love to know, what was your inspiration to create Beakman?
Well, the show is based on a comic that was in the newspaper. It was the first comic that was created on a Mac, like a computer, drawn, rendered on a computer by a guy named Jock Church. And it was called You Can with Beekman and Jax. And kids would write into Beekman and his female assistant or fellow scientist, Jax, and they would answer the questions in the newspaper for the kids. And that got turned into a TV show by an enterprising producer who said, "Oh, this would make a cool TV show." So that's how the show came about. Created from this idea by Jock Church, who was very imaginative, very creative artist who knew science inside and out and had a great sense of humor. And without him, Beekman wouldn't exist. So that's how Beekman came about. And as far as the invention of the character, it's just kind of an exaggeration of me, I guess. A little bit New York accent, a little New York attitude, shoulder rolling, lots of hands, and all of that. The director was a guy from New York, and he would always say, "Give me the bada bing guy, roll the shoulders, give me the hands, and open up those eyes." So those were always my instructions.
Wow. So it's really kind of as you said, a reflection, a little bit exaggerated about yourself and your own
Yeah, it's kind of
personality.
like me when I get excited about something. The executive producer, Mark Waxman, he said the character, it's like when you in a meeting start to get excited about something, you start waving your hands around, your New York accent comes out more. He said that's the guy. So that's how he was born.
That's awesome. So we've actually experienced, in a way, you on TV. So that's very nice to
Yes,
hear.
frightening.
And if we talk a little bit more about the show, well, what was your favorite experience or experiment from the show?
Well, I loved going up the nose. That was a lot of fun. The director, Jay Dubin, he said to me, "How would you do a show about snot, about mucus, stuff in your nose?"
Mm.
And I said, "Well, we should just do an exploration up the nose and discover the snot. And I could be dressed like an astronaut." And so that's pretty much what we did. He took a tube for pouring concrete foundations of skyscrapers, big cardboard tube. It was like, I don't know, a couple of meters across. And then they cut a door in it and they put NASA on it, and it had bubble wrap inside. And then they had $700 worth of Hollywood special effects snot, this green, slimy, disgusting crap. And they covered the inside of that. the tube, the nose, and then the nose hairs were like broom bristles at the end of the tube. And yeah, it was really something. It was fun. I loved doing that episode.
I haven't seen that one, but I must see it. um, and speaking a little bit more thoroughly about that, do you have a specific topic of interest, or do you have something that about science or about the show that you could say like this was really a passion of mine that we could put on TV, like something that you wanted to share?
I think there were a lot of things that were really interesting to me on the show. From the animals that we had on the show, we had an elephant and that was incredible. Just to be around an animal that large and intelligent and beautiful. And the trainer would take the elephant outside to pee and and to poop, and its poops are like basketballs. They were like this big, and they were just like made out of straw or something. These huge things that fell out of its rear end. But the trainer took the elephant over the sewer drain, the big, huge sewer drain in the street outside the studio. And as soon as the elephant was over the drain, it knew, oh, this is where I should pee. So it peed in the drain.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and just feeding it peanuts and having it really close. I mean, that was really amazing. We had a lion on the show too. That was really scary because I was talking and then I'm talking to the camera, and behind me is the lion, and behind the camera is the trainer with a stake on a stick, and he's moving the stake back and forth like this, and the lion's going like this with his head behind me, and I was between the stake and the lion, so that one was I was
Wow.
nervous. It was nerve wracking. Um, so I think having animals on the show is really interesting to me. Doing Einstein, the writers brilliantly figured out how to explain the theory of relativity in 6 minutes for 6 to 12-year-olds. I mean, how do you do that? And
Of
um,
course.
and I got to play Einstein. That was really fun. I enjoyed that. I like playing all the different characters. Um, and I played him as like an old Jewish guy with a Yiddish accent, and yeah, it was fun. So there were a lot of topics that were really interesting. A lot of characters I got to play that I enjoyed. Art Byrne, the chef, I loved playing him because he was disgusting, and stuff would fall out of his mouth into the food. His tooth would fall. He's got a loose tooth, and it's just disgusting. And that was really fun. Yeah, I
I
didn't
really,
really answer your question. Sorry,
I'm sorry?
I didn't really answer your question.
No, that's cool. It's kind of interesting to see your experience and what you enjoyed the most throughout the show. So thank you for sharing that. You spoke a little bit earlier about how your writers were brilliant when trying to explain the theory of Einstein to children and in such a short time. So I wonder, and we were wondering, um, how can we make science more understandable for everybody? Because it's a specific topic which we all need and all live, but it's quite difficult sometimes. So how,
Uh,
what would your advice, or how would you say it would make it easier for everybody to understand?
well, I'm not really very good at giving advice. I'm the wrong guy. I can only tell you how we did things then and how I do things now for live Beekman shows. And that is for the live shows, there's a special agenda. It has to be something that works pretty much all the time, because if you have an experiment that fails 50% of the time, which happens a lot in science, it doesn't make for particularly great entertainment. You want things to work pretty much 100% of the time. If it doesn't work, you can explain, hey, it's an experiment. That's how science works. But if your whole show is like that and you're explaining why none of the demonstrations worked, people are like, I want my money back. Who is this idiot?
Of course.
So whatever constraints that you have to turn those into assets in the work that I do. So if the constraint is technology, limited technology for a live show, then I have to figure out low tech ways of communicating. If it's a complicated thing that I'm trying to explain, then it makes sense to use as much visual assistance as I can, whether it be slides or props or audience participation on stage. So I'm a big believer in humor, in props, in visuals, in audience participation, and all of that together. Those are the tools that I have for making up work about science.
Mhm. That's super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I
Sure.
think we all, well, here at Talent Land, we can all use benefit from those advices. And going a little bit deeper into this, also, from your point of view, what's the importance of learning or experiencing science or being exposed to science throughout childhood? Because I think, since we already said science can be a very challenging topic, and there's a lot of things that involve a lot of understanding and thinking and problem solving and things like that. But I think it's kind of like a journey, and you you get to a certain point by being exposed to science, so that you can like it, understand it, and maybe make a career out of it, right? So, um, what do you think it's why is it important to expose ourselves, since we're kids, to science?
Well, I think that the purpose of education is to teach us to think, to have a critical mind, to have the capacity, the facilities to be critical, to take information and to evaluate it and to judge it and make decisions based on that. And science is very important. It's a very important way of looking at the world, at the universe, at creation, at existence, and how we're here and why we're here. And I think that's like endlessly fascinating. I just read a book by that guy Wilson, the ant expert, and it's about
Mhm.
ants and their different societies and how they wage war, how they take care of their young, what position the queen holds. They're very matriarchal societies. The women are in charge of virtually everything. The male ants in many ant cultures in species or whatever, uh, the males are just slaves. They just do a certain amount of very limited work, and then they die or they get killed or whatever. And that's hilarious. I mean, to see a matriarchal society that's
With
like
ants.
puts any patriarchy to shame, is pretty amazing. And so by studying these things and understanding these things, I think we can learn a lot about ourselves and a lot about how we can explore and learn and then communicate this interesting material to other folks.
Definitely, yeah. I think there's even a field called biomesis, something or something like that, that it studies
Hmm.
the way animals and the ecosystems function, so that we can kind of imitate them and and create better environments for ourselves. So I think that's amazing. That's super interesting. Quite complicated also, but very
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, just the study of the history of science, we learn a lot. How discoveries were made, what the popular perceptions of things were, how revolutionary scientists were, who got into a lot of trouble, like Galileo, because what they believed was contrary to what the dominant religious beliefs were. So, the study of the history of science is super fascinating too. It wasn't something we got into in Beekman's world, but something that intrigues me all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. As you said, by analyzing the history or the ways that other people or others ecosystem exists, we can also learn for our own future, right? Um,
Indeed. Yeah.
And so, just for fun, changing subjects, we were wondering, what's the science myth that you were most like struck or shocked to discover? Like, what was the thing that you said, "Wow, I didn't really know that through the big man world." I mean, that you didn't know, and through the big man world, you got to know. What's the science myth or something like very curious that you discovered?
Well, I think advanced astrophysics is super
Wow.
interesting and hard to get my brain around. And I'm always learning about this field. It's incredible when you think about the light that's hitting your eyes when you look at the sky. Some of it is billions of years old. So that light was generated like billions of years ago, and it's hitting your eye now. I mean, that's just that in and of itself is completely mind blowing. And
Definitely.
black holes and the universe, the limits of the universe, how all these bodies relate to each other, interact with each other, is to me endlessly fascinating. So I think that's one field that obviously there's a lot more to explore. They just took a sample off of an asteroid, both I believe, a Japanese team and an American team separately. It's unclear if the American team was successful in getting this sample. I know they lost a little bit of the sample, but it'll be interesting to see what the composition of this material that they got from the asteroid, what it teaches us about the history of the cosmos and how it works. And I'm looking forward to hearing about that. And then there's always discoveries like just this week, Cambridge University, I believe it was Cambridge, came out with a study that said that people who swim in very cold water can actually grow new brain synapses, and that it could be a
Mhm.
way to fight dementia. And
Mm.
this is super interesting too. The idea of actually
Yeah.
growing new brain synapses by swimming in really cold water. It's like, wow, okay. So I'm swimming in cold water now.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's kind of funny because last 2 weeks ago, I kind of did a workshop with that, going into very cold water, and it's quite shocking, but as you said, they say that it has a lot of benefits for the health, and it's quite interesting. It's a very, very, very interesting experience. You can take it as positive or probably negative too, but it's pretty cool.
How cold was the water?
Um, I really don't recall, but we could only stay for 3 minutes because after that we could start getting hypothermia if we didn't control it. So it's called the Wim Hof method. So it's this very famous guy who does this as therapy, and I don't know, it was really interesting. And as you said, um, you do feel a change even if you're just exposed for the first time. I don't think I created new brain synapses at that moment, but I could
Right.
experience something different in the body. So it's quite
Well, what
something.
happens?
And
Yeah, what happens when you go in cold water is your heart rate increases, your respiration increases, and your blood pressure increases.
Mhm.
And these increases can be dangerous for you if you aren't quite healthy.
Yeah,
And then it's why you shouldn't jump in the water if it's cold. You should go up to your waist and wait like 30 seconds or a minute, and then put more of your body in, then put your
yeah,
face in and breathe a little bit. And that allows your body to acclimate. The way most people drown in cold water is you have a tendency to hyperventilate, to breathe very quickly. And while that very quick involuntary breathing happens, you can inhale water, and you only have to inhale like I don't know, a cup of water to drown. So
wow,
the important thing is when you get into cold water is to adjust to the temperature so that your breathing isn't super rapid.
yeah, definitely.
And once your breathing becomes calm, then you're okay in the water. Then when you get out, you don't feel cold because the cold blood is in your extremities. The warm blood is in your core, and your brain keeps it that way until you get out, and then your brain starts shifting the warm blood from your core into your extremities, and that 15 minutes after you get out, that's when you get really cold, and that's when it's really dangerous
Okay.
because that's when hypothermia happens.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of science involved, and
Yeah.
I'm reading a lot and learning a lot about it.
And it's really interesting. And as I said, it was a workshop, and it was well taken care of. And we're with experts, of course. Don't do this at home, just out of nowhere. But it's definitely something to look into. It's pretty interesting, as you said. So
Yeah,
moving forward a little bit, You already kind of said it and you already kind of answered it, but I would like to just make an emphasis on it. What's the thing that you valued the most, or the thing you learned that to you is dearest to your heart throughout the Bigman world?
Well, I think what interested me a lot was just communicating complicated, sophisticated information in a way that would be effective for adults and children. And that's always been an interest of mine. I mean, you said in the beginning, in the introduction, that I'm an actor, and I suppose that's true. I mean, I identify mostly as a puppeteer, and I've done puppet shows for many years, but I also did shows about various information like food processing. I had a show years ago, and that show actually got me the Peakman job. I play a food technologist in this video, and I have like a white lab coat and a chef's hat. And using slides, I talk about the way that food is manufactured, different ingredients, how many rat droppings you can have in food according to the government, how many rat hairs, all of this kind of stuff. So before I did Beekman, I was already taking information like nuclear weapons command and control, how nuclear weapons are controlled, how they're launched, who has it's not comedy particularly, but it's
Definitely.
really interesting. So I wanted to find a way to take that raw information and to turn it into entertainment that was actually quite horrifying. So people are basically laughing at something that very well might kill them, and
Hmm.
um, and so the Beekman thing was very similar to that. I was already doing work mainly with slides back in the day of slideshows before PowerPoint and all of that.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
So that I love that you what you just said about trying to share information that's really complicated to and make it accessible to people, because that's the power of knowledge and that's the power of information, right? If you know how to use it and how to share it, I do believe that we can. I mean, this is going to sound a little bit cheesy, but I do believe that through that we can actually make a better world. Despite or in spite all of the things that happened around the world and the crisis that we go through, and as you said, topics that are not necessarily funny and that could actually be quite serious and scary. Just to find the humor in it, to find the actual important information or useful information for our own personal growth and as a society also. So thank you for your experience, your testimony, and for sharing that experience also. And in
yeah.
that
I
note,
mean,
yeah, sorry,
I just
sorry.
want to say, I think that humor is so important in this whole picture. It's really what I'm dedicated to, and dedicated to in the making of the TV show, of the live shows, all of that humor. That's my starting point. That's my ending point, and it's super important and a great tool.
Definitely. So, in that note, would you like to say something to the audience in this times? Something to be inspired or just to encourage them?
Well, we're living through some tough times with the coronavirus. It's really hard to maintain social distancing, wearing a mask after such a long time. It's really tough. I think it's hard for all of us. We get to this point where we're like, okay, I'm done with this already. I don't want to wear a mask anymore. I want to hang out with my friends and my family, but we got to stick to it. Got to wear the mask. Got to stick to science. Follow the science. That's what I'm trying to do. It's a challenge, but that's I could just share. It's driving me nuts, just like everybody else. But I'm wearing the mask, and I'm not going anywhere.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And well, there you have it, guys. Thank you, Paul, for your time. Thank you for sharing your experience and that important message to always remember to take to to understand the situation and make some humor out of it, just to stay better and to be happy and to just go through the things we're going through right now. So thank you very much, Paul. Thank you
Thanks
for
for
your
having
time.
me.
And so I'm going to switch to Spanish right now. So thank you so much.
Right on.
Muchísimas gracias a todos ustedes, talentos, por estar aquí. Gracias, Paul. Creo que nos dio un mensaje súper interesante y sobre todo recordándonos esta parte de siempre tomarnos las cosas con un cierto grado de humor para sobrellevar la situación que vivimos de una mejor manera. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. No se pierdan las conferencias y los temas que siguen, seguramente van a estar interesantísimos. Síganos en nuestras redes sociales. Yo soy Alexa y nos vemos pronto.